You launched your 100th Fitstop studio in January this year. How did you do that?
It was in an industrial shed. It was $20,000 or $30,000 a year rent. Talked to my wife into selling her Toyota Corolla, $18,000, and funded the equipment. I learned really quickly I had no idea about business. I think the conversation was, well, if you don't do it, we'll probably lose everything anyway. We went from 30 members to 120 members within kind of 9 months. I developed a really simple strategy.
Just having these conversations, to me, shows the benefits of someone buying into a franchise. The whole F45 media thing that's going on at the moment, I'm not sure if it's giving a bad name to franchising or giving a bad name to the fitness industry. I just want to get your take on it. Hey guys, please leave us a review, hopefully 5 stars, and it'll really help us keep growing and getting more guests on the podcast, and we'll continue delivering amazing content for you. Thanks. Episode 4, Fitness Franchising. We've got Pete Hull from Fitstop. Guys, today you're going to learn the ins and outs of fitness franchising and how Pete went from 1 studio to 100 plus and all the lessons that he learned along the way. Please enjoy. Episode 4, Sweat vs. Equity. Pete Hull, welcome.
Thanks for having me, mate. I'm excited to be here and chat all things franchising today.
Yeah, mate. It's been a long time coming. I think we've been talking about getting you on a potty for a while. I can't even remember where we met or when we met. But it's pretty exciting because I guess for me, there's not a lot of people that I can go to for advice in the fitness industry. Franchising can be a lonely place, and yeah, mate, the advice I get from you, and I'm sure, at times I probably annoy you with questions and stuff like that, but mate, it's been really, really beneficial. And just to see where you've come, I mean, you launched your 100th Fitstop studio in January this year.
Yeah.
You've done your flagship in Santa Monica in the US, and that launched in Feb, is that correct?
Yeah, we've got a little pop-up happening there at the moment to build some brand equity. Yeah,
nice. And mate, I just think, well, let's start by just touching on the story, because to start, I guess, with 1 studio and get to 100 would make you quite unique in itself. So, mate, I'm really interested to hear sort of how you got here.
Yeah, look, I'll give the short version because I could talk all day. But short version of my story is I wanted to be an athlete. I grew up racing motocross. I had a couple of knee reconstructions, and that forced me to pivot my life. And when you can't play your sport anymore, whether it be a team sport or something like motocross or BMX, it really changes, I guess, how you think about maybe your next chapter. For me, I wanted to be around sport, team, fitness, performance. So when you can't do any more, you start to teach, right? But first and foremost, I needed to find some form of education. So I went and studied my Cert 3 and 4 at Australian Institute of Fitness. Gave them a bit of a shout out, a bit of a plug. And I just started to try to learn as much as I possibly could. Firstly, it was quite a selfish approach. I wanted to learn how to do my rehab better. Obviously, I didn't do my rehab well the first time I did my ACL, so I wanted to do it better the second time. And I was really fortunate to be surrounded by people that bought into my story and probably passion for the industry. And I met some great people who were able to essentially pay their education forward. I met an amazing physiotherapist, an S&C coach that started to teach me what they were doing in their fields, their industries. And then I got to use that, firstly for myself, but secondly, because they were giving me their time, I fell in love with the philosophy of pay it forward, see if I can help more people the way that I was helped and supported. And I did that in the motocross world. So, got my qualifications, worked with these amazing guys, built out a S&C program, focused on all the basics of human performance and fitness, and then applied that to professional motocross riders, BMX riders, triathletes, and just started to really broaden out my own personal brand as a personal trainer.
Hey, what year was that roughly? I'm interested in the timelines here.
Yeah, it's definitely not an overnight success. So that was around 2010. So I think I was 23 at the stage, yep. 22. Yep. And it was at that crossroads of my life of, okay, well, if I can't do sport, I kind of need to grow up and get a real job, which I just still haven't done. But was
Me and
just
you
so
both.
so passionate about the space. So, went from a dedicated kind of S&C coach in a world that didn't have this level of support. So for me, looking back now, I found my niche. And I think that's super important, finding a niche, going all in on it, building your skill set and understanding how can you evolve that. That then turned into a group training facility. So went from online coach, in person, traveling Australia, traveling the US, just working with athletes, to then applying that to the bigger picture. That was me being semi-arrogant in a way, that thinking I could maybe help more people and jump into a different world of business. So I started a group fitness studio. It was in an industrial shed. It was $20,000 or $30,000 a year rent. Talked my wife into selling her Toyota Corolla, $18,000, and funded the equipment. And we just did whatever it took to get the thing open. No plan, no strategy, no real brand. I wanted to take what I'd built that had been enhancing athletes' lives and then bring it to more people. And kicked that off in 2013. Opened with 30 members because they were my clients, my PT clients, and went on this evolution of learning the pain and the joy of growing a business.
And so was that first gym, was that called Fitstop?
It was, but it wasn't. So my personal training brand was called P2P, Power to Perform. My mum came up with it, actually. Super random. She thought I could give people the power to perform. And I was going to the motocross tracks, and in motorsport, if everyone follows the F1, you can relate. Drive to Survive, great series. But it's called a pit stop, right? Come in, change your tires, go back out. So I was creating this P2P's Fitstop, like a pit stop where my athletes could come, they could get treated by a physiotherapist, they could do warm-ups, they could come and hydrate, they could be looked after. So that was my essential pop-up activation, essentially, at all of these events across Australia. So when we opened the first location, we called it P2P's Fitstop. Big stop sign, red, ugly. P2P was nice and big, and then it was kind of like buy a Fitstop down the bottom. So, yeah.
There you go, mate. I actually haven't heard that story in its entirety, so that's really interesting. So you've done the hard yards. You've worked as a S&C coach. You've got that IP or that level of IP. You've brought it into this one group fitness facility and scrounged together and got the money to open it up. And I mean, mate, at what point did you decide to turn this into, I guess, the beast that it is? Was it something that gradually happened, or was it this internal belief that, hang on, I'm onto something here and I'm going to expand to, albeit 100 studios now? How did that develop?
Yeah, look, I learned really quickly. I had no idea about business. I thought I was a bit of a rock star when it came to being an S&C coach or working in the fitness space, but I just had no idea. I didn't have a marketing background. I didn't understand a sales funnel. So I went and signed up at a program called the Entourage. It's an entrepreneur's business development business. I paid a lot of money to do it, which we couldn't afford to do at the time, but again, Beck's been always super supportive by me and what our next chapter needed to be. I think the conversation was, well, if you don't do it, we'll probably lose everything anyway, so you probably should go and spend the money on signing up to learn. And I guess, for me, I've always been at those stages where I need to go all in to work out what's next. And I think starting any business, whether you're a personal trainer out there or you're running your own gym, you have to make those sacrifices. You have to invest in yourself first and foremost, to then be able to learn enough to build out something that is, some form of success, which for me, success back then was, how do I pay rent on time? How do I contribute to our family? All the basics. But I learned about business, and that was super important. I learned how to write and read a P&L, how to do a budget, how to create a marketing funnel, how to stand up an Instagram page, how to have a landing page or a website, which is all the stuff we didn't have, which is crazy to think. It was 2013, and none of that stuff existed for me then. But I went on a bit of a journey of really falling in love with that next phase for me, and I've kind of always stayed true to that pay it forward piece. So I started to bring on personal trainers that I not only wanted to evolve into the group fitness space and give them an opportunity to be a part of the journey, but also build their personal training business. So, for our first couple locations, it was, how do I bring amazing people on that can not only help me grow and evolve the brand Fitstop, but how can I give back to them? So, we went from 30 members to 120 members within kind of 9 months.
How did you do that?
I developed a really simple strategy. I knew the training formula was where it needed to be. It's always been an S&C program, still what it is today. We've changed brand elements, but look, the training program is exactly what it was. It's a 12-week training cycle. We applied a marketing lens across that, so we have key campaigns that align with the training format. I believe you need to have a really solid product first before you can go shout it from the rooftop. So for me, it's always, what's the fitness product? What have we programmed out? What marketing campaigns are we filtering through that? So we're funneling people in at the right time with the right intensity and intent. And then we just kept doing that. So we've got a strategy of 12 weeks on and recycle that 4 times a year. We try not to change through things throughout that seasonal approach or that annual campaign set. We just really focus on what's worked and what we want to tweak to make sure campaign on campaign it gets better. So for us back then, it was a free week. Friends and family. I had no marketing budget. Right? I didn't know how to run a campaign, but I knew how to unlock our technology stack so that people could book in for free. So bring your friends and family, come and experience Fitstop. That would then feed straight into, back then it was a 6-week challenge. Now we call it a series. But something that people could really identify for themselves what their real goals were. To go from an extrinsic motivator or intrinsic motivator to an extrinsic motivator, and do something for themselves. We would do that. We would get amazing results after the 6 weeks. We'd have an awesome after party. We would get human connection, and we'd go again. That's still the campaign we run today. We've definitely changed it. We've got much more advanced on it. We've got way better technology, systems, and brand and budget. But that's what we do.
I was going to say, because so you created Free Week back in 2013, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That is incredible, because when I moved up to Queensland during the pandemic, trained at Fitstop Bundle, and I took advantage of the Free Week.
Absolutely.
The cheapskate in me, and actually loved it, and kept training there. And that was only a couple of years ago. So it's amazing that you've been running this framework for this entirety of Fitstop's lifespan. Mate, it's pretty cool. And so you've sort of built up this first studio. You've got sort of some cool systems in place. Things seem to be working. At what point did you then go, okay, was it then time to franchise, or was it time to go to site 2, or how did that expansion sort of happen?
So we moved out of basically this tin shed after a year. Somehow I convinced the landlord to let me break the lease. I still don't know how. I definitely didn't get legal review or anything at the time. But what we did was we moved into a retail space. We focused on brand. We focused on consistency. I focused on team. We went from 120 members to 250 members in a 140 square meter retail space at the back of this kind of shopping center. It literally was like, it was an old auto tune or something. Had a garage door. We ripped it out. We put glazing in. But we developed this culture of, internal success. People were raving about Fitstop because of the results they were getting, but also the friendships they were creating. And we just stayed true to what the campaign cycle was, how we educated community on that, the fact that they could bring friends and pay it forward and help other people experience it. And I think from the very start, we've created this amazing team element of what we do. From there, it grew to 240 or so members, to the stage that we didn't even have wait lists back then. It was just people would rock up. We would have sometimes 80 people in a session on a Saturday. We'd use car parks. We just did what it took.
In 140 square meter space.
It's wild to think, yes.
And I'd imagine, that would have been quite a profitable business. Having a footprint that low means that your rent's not through the roof. You're not paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So it's pretty cool to think that you achieved that in such a small space. Because when you said 140 squares, I was like, man, I don't, even with all the F45s I owned, nothing was ever that small.
Well,
it's pretty crazy.
What it actually taught me really early on was the fitness element needed to be systemized as well. So our fitness element is actually how we build human connection, team-based training, because like you would have experienced in Bundle, you'll go into a lift session and you're training in a team of 3. you're spotting each other, you're working with each other. We actually built that out, a lot of it, because we had limited space. I wanted to fit 30 plus people into 140 squares. I wanted them to lift weights safely. So we needed to be able to pair people the right way. We worked out ratios of what exercises used minimal footprint, how the functionality and flow needed to work, so that basically we didn't get the CrossFit effect of like dead ants on a floor, organized chaos. Everything had a rhyme or reason to it, and we just stuck to it. So you could come into a Fitstop session, they could be 36 people in a 140 square meter space, but there was a system and a format and a formula around it to make sure that people understood what they were doing. And that was a big lesson early on. If you can bring someone in for a first session and they can understand, feel connected to the workout, understand what's next and how they're going to get the most out of that training style or the intent behind it, you're going to create that stickiness. If they walk in and they're confused, they're probably not going to walk back. So we focused heavily on the systems behind growing a community. And then I wanted to challenge myself. I had amazing trainers. They're still with us today. My original trainers actually work in HQ now. But I wanted to challenge that. I wanted to plug Anthony into a management role. I met him when he was an 18-year-old, washed up footy player out of school. I wanted to challenge him and challenge our systems to see if he could drive the same growth in a management role. I went and leased another building. We opened, what was our second P2P Fitstop. Still called it P2P Fitstop back then.
Company owned.
Yep. Zero pre-sales, which scares me today, right? You would never do that. The numbers I see now that we open with blow my mind.
Yep.
And think back to my strategy then was build it and they will come. Open it like it's a festival. We did VIP entry, sign up to the sessions. But really fortunate that, we opened in an area that wanted our training style. So on day one, I think we ended up having 140 people or something turn up for the first session. We split it across 2 sessions. We were using the car park, but I had relationships with Red Bull. So Red Bull DJ truck there, blow up swimming pools. We made it an event. And when you do things like that, I think people have more patience. You're not just there for the workout. You're there to be a part of something that's bigger, that's special, that you want to be a part of the journey. So we opened that one. We signed 50 members in the first week. So I was already in front of my first location. And then within 3 months, 150 members, appointed a manager into that location. And I started to work out then what it was like to manage across 2. How do I become a GM and step into my next phase of growth?
It's did you have this sort of feeling of momentum? Like, did it just feel like you were onto something very special? I guess where I'm coming from is there's probably a lot of people out there that have got 1 gym or 2 gyms or have started their own concept. And I guess it's that sort of level of imposter syndrome. Can I take this to the next level? Have I got the momentum? Do I back myself to keep going? Yep. Was it just this sort of intuition that this is something special, or was it sort of just a self-belief, or what kind of got you to that next level?
I think naivety, for sure. I think I
love it.
From looking at what was next, I just knew there was more. But to be honest, one of my biggest drivers, and actually the real reason I franchised, was I was watching my managers and trainers live an incredible life, be a part of something that was built off a system. And when I looked at how I could grow and scale that, I did look at, okay, well, what if we own 10? And what if I shared, I had amazing managers and gave them a great career? Because, you've been in fitness industry, it's challenging, right? Like if you're a PT, you can make some great money, but you go on holidays for 4 weeks and you come back and you got 0 revenue. Like it's a challenging, super challenging industry to make a career out of, unless you really nail it. So, first and foremost, I wanted to do that. So I started looking at, okay, how could I do my third, but how could I get more people involved? I've always been someone that will find people that have been there and done it before me. And I'll always, for myself, think about who do I need to be next, and not from changing my personality type or any of those kind of things. It's, who do I plug in to learn from? And then how do I get there really quickly? So I had a couple of buddies that had actually franchised in the food space. Went and sat with them, reached out to multiple people, understood the complexities of franchising. Definitely not what I understand about it now, but I understood that franchising was something that I needed to take serious if I was going to do it.
This is Stuart Cook, Sambrero.
Hadn't met Stu yet.
Yep.
This was like people that had early franchise models, like under 10 stores, like super fresh to it, just to get that like initial what's my pain going to be like. And I think secretly I enjoy the pain. I enjoy the ride. So again, Beck, my wife, she thinks that I try to make our life stupidly hard at times, which I do. And she'll have the conversation like, hey, now's not the time to make our life hard. Like, take a step back. But we decided to franchise because I wanted to have more people in the industry experience what I was fortunate enough to do. And a byproduct of that is we get to have more members, we get to make more of an impact, and I get to share more of the reason I started in fitness in the first place, and that was genuinely help people get results. So yeah, went and met a franchise lawyer, jumped in the deep end, built out a franchise agreement, got some, the right people around me of advisors, and we kicked it off. And the first probably 5 were close people we knew, members, friends of members that were interested in business and fitness. And that was our prerequisite on entry. It was you had to be passionate about fitness and business. I knew what it had taken to go from that startup stage of zero money, zero revenue to be able to build what we had. And that's how we kicked it off.
How important were those first 5? Because you do hear it very often, and a lot of my friends that have gone into franchising say the exact same thing. Yeah. These first 5 or 10 need to absolutely destroy. They need to be amazing communities. Yeah. They need to be great operators. How important was that for you?
Man, it was actually really about the personality. And, again, back then, we're launching in the US at the moment, and it's a very different state of play. But, back then, no systems, no toolkits, no real brand, like, to be honest, no real understanding of what I was doing. But I had passion and belief, and people bought into that. So when I was meeting with people, my conversation was that I've always been super transparent. I would say to them, guys, like, I know how to build 2, I don't know how to build 10, but I want to go on the journey with the right people. And genuinely, we're going to be in business together to do this. So, Chris and Christy, Chris was one of my original members at Redland Bay, the Tin Shed. They bought our first real Fitstop because we did then brand to Fitstop as we franchised. We dropped the P2P. 2017.
Was that a sad moment for you?
No, it was happy. Look, it was one of those ones where it's like, it doesn't really make sense to call it this. So our first rebrand was just calling it Fitstop.
Well done.
But they bought our first location, and they just 100% believed in the vision. Fortunately, Chris had been a part of the brand for a long time. We opened with 0 members with them. We did the complete fit out ourselves. We did whatever it took. I'm down there doing all their inductions. Anthony, my manager at Victoria Point, he's coming and we're helping on open day. But we did the same thing. We open up and we had 2 full sessions. We created an amazing vibe. But the reality was, on Monday, it was like they had like 10 paying members. So then we went on this crazy journey together. But so grateful for the first 5, the first 10. I think for me, there's different elements. There's definitely the first 5, then the first 10, and then it's like your first 50, then the first 100. And then the sophistication starts coming in. But, Christy now works in head office as a business performance coach. They're still a multi-site owner. They've been able to bring great managers in that have equity in their businesses, and she's paying it forward, which, stays true to the reason I franchised, the reason I started in the first place, and I love it.
How important were those early lessons? Because, like, let's talk about presale, and you've kind of reverted back to the fact that a few times, at the start, you opened with no members.
Yep.
Now, looking at Fitstop, I'll see on average you guys sometimes opening with 200, 250, 300. Yep. And it looks like on average you guys are getting between 150, 200 plus members before opening.
Yep.
And it's something that I noticed when I kicked off Strong. I noticed you guys doing, and I said, well, I want to do that as well.
Yeah.
And we had a bit of a conversation about it, and I sort of learnt my way of doing pre-sale. I was probably pretty lucky to have had that connect with you and sort of some other people in the fitness industry. You probably went through it the hard way, where, you had to learn, oh shit, on the Monday I've only got 10 members. Like, have you just been literally storing this information every time you launch a studio and just try and get better every single time? Is there a process here? Is it just constant improvement?
Yeah, it is. But we also go through these seasonal cycles because there's one element of constant improvement, but you also have to collect data over time to really understand it. Like I've definitely been guilty of being a bit of a tornado in the office where I'm walking in, I'm seeing things that maybe aren't going to plan, or I've got an idea. And that can become quite a large distraction, especially for the size we are now. So we have a very different process now where we want to set key campaigns. We do very strict quarterly cycles, and then we bring the right people in to analyze the data, to get views and opinions, because views and opinions are still super important. We look at market trends, and then we start to refine elements to plug in, especially with our pre-sale. But if I go back to the very start, there was none of that. It was literally, cool, let's get through an open, then let's sit as a team and go, what worked, what was the biggest pain points? And to be honest, usually the biggest pain points, that resulted in tears. That resulted in emotion because it was challenging, but that's where we learnt the most. When you're starting from zero and you've got to grow to be in a profitable position, again, because I didn't take franchise lightly. I knew franchising was how do we build amazing brands, systems, how do we prove success so that people want to get a good return on investment, and live in the space or the industry that they love. So for me, it was sprint very, very quickly to make sure that our locations were in a profitable state. And we did that through key campaigns, we did that through learnings, but it was about location number 8 that we bought in pre-sale. Again, sometimes maybe I'm a little too stubborn or in personal values driven. Up until 8, I was a firm believer that we needed to build it and they will come, because I didn't believe I should take people's money, even though we don't charge them before they rock up. We weren't justified yet enough the success or the model or even the training style to warrant that. So I just wanted to create a really top heavy lead funnel, then bring in converting, rather than casting a wide net, struggle to convert, not get the hype and exposure. So kind of still the same strategy, although back then it was more the top of funnel for me was just get them to come and experience it, then start converting. Whereas now top of funnel is throw the brand out everywhere, the success stories, the impact we're making, then start to convert before we open.
In what regard do you hold pre-sale now?
So high.
Yeah, isn't it incredible?
Yeah, it's insane. And that's something that, again, we've got incredible reporting. I've got such an incredible team that dedicated to focus on pre-sale. But it's not just the pre-sale element, it's your whole induction process. It's the moment they sign a franchise agreement to getting to that opening piece. It's an entire journey. It's an emotional roller coaster, but that has to have a plan. It has to have a rhyme and reason behind it. And we genuinely look quarter on quarter at how we can make all of that better. Pre-sale is one part, and you could outsource all of it. But I'm a big believer in making sure we've educated on the front end, so that by the time we open the doors, these business owners know every element of Fitstop, that they just hit the ground running. Because the other thing we faced was, we opened, we started pre-sale. I think we got to a stage that we hit maybe 100 members, on open day, which then brought this new complexity around not knowing the 100 members on open day, having wait lists on sessions, not probably having the systems and operations of full classes in your first week versus 10 people in a class on first week. So we needed to then work through that process of upskilling and education from day one, rather than you'll ease into it.
And with your pre-sale now, I guess you would teach your franchisees how to manage those, call it 200 people that are pre-sold. Are you, and this is quite an intricate question, but do you guys just keep selling until you can't sell anymore? Is there a tap out point for you? Because I know we do it in a certain way where we actually do work on volume, and then do our very, very best to cater for that community from day one.
Yeah.
How do you guys do it?
Look, the big thing we focus on is where we want to drive yield to, because again, you can have heaps of members, but where are you driving your yield? So we focus on a bit of a tiered approach. So what we call our kind of friends and family release, which is below the line. Then we move into our OG 1, 2, and 3, so our originals. I guess it's a little bit of that Apple strategy of you want people lining up out the front. You have your early adopters which want to buy in, and we believe they should be rewarded for that. But we set really disciplined approaches. So every time we go into a pre-sale, we need to sign off on what the business plan is. So we work directly with the business owners, our induction specialist, Danny, does, to set, okay, what's the strategy we want here from a local marketing piece? of driving our friends and family. What's the number we're capping that at? And then we increase that. So, we'll start at a certain price point and it'll increase $5 every tier till we can drive from open our top price point that we believe is value adding in that community. We have not got to a stage yet that we've stopped memberships, but what we do is we push into what the normal membership will be from day one quite early when it does have a good run rate. Because again, you want a great community there from day one, but you also, for your business owner, want a great return on investment.
Even just having these conversations, to me, shows the benefits of someone buying into a franchise. Like, you've got these systems in place. You've been through this multiple times now. You've refined the process, and I'm sure you're still always refining, right?
Yeah.
Even to this day, I'm not sure what you're at now, maybe 105, 110.
108.
108,
yeah.
okay, close enough.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you're constantly analysing and trying to improve. But I'd imagine, look how far you've come from that first studio. So I guess when you're weighing up a decision as, say, investing as an investor in the fitness industry or opening your own gym, I think franchising is pretty amazing. I had a friend of mine the other day wanted to open a studio in Adelaide, and he said, do I open a Fitstop or a Revel? And I thought that was pretty cool because he's probably capable of doing his own thing as well, yet he's looking to franchising. To you, and I know it's somewhat biased, but what do you see as sort of the main benefits of sort of investing in a franchise?
Franchising for me, it's the ultimate team sport. Like, you genuinely have this community of people that care and you can lean on. Something that we do in our group is we publish benchmark reports. And again, if I go back to being an athlete or coaching and training athletes, we want to learn from people around us. We want to be surrounded by people that, maybe have slightly better split times than us. And that's the benefit of franchising. You actually get to learn off each other, but then on top of that, you've got a franchise network run by a franchisor that has to focus on brand evolution, that has to focus on systems and strategy, that has to provide leadership and give a tone of voice of confidence that we're all moving in the right direction. And I think when franchising's done well, then you get that collaboration, you get a team that's all driving in the same direction. But I think honestly, one of the biggest reasons of joining a franchise group is to be a part of a team. Business is lonely, but when you can see a database of your fellow Fitstop owners, and you can literally look at some of their stats around, whether it be yield or conversions on a campaign, or attrition rates, and you can pick up the phone, DM them on Instagram and be like, hey, you did this really well, can I buy you a coffee and learn more? Sometimes that's more powerful than reaching out to a support person in HQ.
Is that happening a bit in your network? Would you say there's a lot of sort of success stories where high performers, and there's always going to be high performers and low performing studios, we know that. Have you seen success stories where someone who is quite high performing has taken a low performing studio under their wing and kind of mentored them?
So last year, we really reviewed how we were providing a support layer for our network. And I decided that it could be quite interesting to look at our network more as a high performance athlete. So when we're working with high performance athletes, we look at split times and we would categorize people around their same zone. So if I'm going to go run a marathon, I'm not going to go and sign up with someone that's going to try to train for a sub 3 hour marathon, right? Like, let's be honest, I want to sign up with someone that's probably going to run maybe a 4 hour marathon.
5 for me.
Yeah, 5 for you. But you want to go train with like-minded people, yeah? You want to train with people that definitely a little bit faster than you, but you want to be able to encourage and push each other. And if I'm going to go run with someone that's sub 3, Jason Daniel from LSKD's going for a sub 3, I'm not going to train with him at the moment. A year and a half ago, went running with him and his crew. I'm not going to do that anymore, right? I'm not going to feel inspired, motivated, encouraged, unless I want to just completely destroy myself. So what we did at the start of this year, we worked with the ops and marketing team and we broke apart our entire network into levels. So we go from level 1, which is up to a certain member number, all the way up to level 5, which is over 300 members. So then we can actually give our network exactly what they need, how they need it, when they need it. Part of that program is we've now got a closer knit community of people in the same levels that can benchmark off each other. So although we still publish an entire corporate, company benchmark, we also then break it down into their levels so they can go, okay, cool. Well, this location, which has 50 members more than me, did this conversion rate. So I really want to reach out to them, and they're really encouraged and motivated to do that. We do network calls with those levels where we can have open communication around what's working, what's not, what we should focus on. But on top of that, we get to work with level 5 guys that are, 300 plus members, making incredible money. They've obviously worked out how to maximize the franchise group, the business model, and made it their own, right? So we're able to then plug those guys in, level 5 into the likes of level 1 and 2 to be able to provide some mentorship when needed. It gives a different perspective on it. We're able to utilize our level 5 guys to come into training induction days and just talk about, brilliant basics and how they've added a bit of personality to it and really made it their own. But it's created definitely a different dynamic within our group.
It's a really cool way of looking at it. We sort of break them up into 3, based off revenue, but that's very cool. And I like the fact that, the ones, we'll look at the ones as a comparison as opposed to, you're not going to get much out of someone with 400 members and someone with 50 members comparing themselves, because it's just going to be deflating, right?
Yeah.
But I think a mentorship is brilliant.
And it's exciting, so we, again, because we have quarterly campaigns, seasonal cycles, every quarter, then we get to actually stop and physically review, okay, who's moved where, and then the ops team get to sit down and move people into different levels. And, sure, sometimes people might drop back, but I know they just did a review this week, and I think it was something like 15 people, 15 locations are moving up into the next level. And that's something to celebrate, because in franchising, it also, at times you forget to slow down and think about the impact you're making, especially from a head office level where there's so many moving parts, there's so many opinions. So even from an internal celebrate the wins point of view, we get to sit there and talk about, these 15 locations have moved up a level, they've increased revenue by this many thousand a month now, and what that could mean for them in their life. That's something that I'm pretty proud of.
Hey, I wanted to bring this up because it's quite relevant at the moment, and we can keep going on about the positives of franchising because we're in it daily, but the whole F45 media thing that's going on at the moment, I'm not sure if it's giving a bad name to franchising or giving a bad name to the fitness industry. I just want to get your take on it. I generally will see, and it's going in mainstream media now around how many F45s are shutting down. What I'm seeing in these articles in the Sydney Morning Herald and those sort of publications are actually franchisees jumping in and commenting, there's still a couple of hundred studios open. Yeah. They still have very strong communities, and, the media is sort of blowing this out of proportion. What's your opinion on it all? Do you think it's kind of pushing people away from choosing a franchise?
Look, I think there's a couple of things I'm looking at the moment with F45. One, I've always looked at that brand to go, wow, what an incredible Australian success story. I genuinely believe they've created a path for people like us to create something truly special and to be proud to be an Australian brand that has broadened to overseas. But I think from an Australian media lens, they always want to look for a story, right? No doubt they've published stuff about both of us that's probably incorrect at times. They attach themselves to these stories that, they want to be able to, get these hooks and blow up in the media. F45's been on the positive end of that before. I'm sure there's been a bunch of journalists out there that have had a field day with, the Mark Wahlberg story, the US expansion, the hitting the 1,000th location open, all of that sort of stuff. And I think sometimes we forget elements of the success they genuinely created and the opportunity they brought to the fitness space. Right now, the media is tarnishing F45 with all the negatives, which some of it is warranted. But I think what it's doing for us and the franchising space is people are becoming more savvy. What it has, it's highlighted that business isn't easy. Things do go wrong. for us, we're getting more questions around what's the leadership, what's the ownership group look like, what do exit strategies look like, what's your support and infrastructure, where have you invested into technology? I think it's actually made the right people even more savvy to ask the right questions and not lead in anywhere blind. So if you're a franchise group that doesn't have elements of this, is lacking direction, then that's where you might be starting to come unstuck with more people that are being better educated on what they should look for in a franchise in general.
Yeah, I agree. We're definitely getting more questions around, longevity, and I think it's an easy question for us. Longevity in Pilates is huge, but I guess what do you think is the warranted argument for the media? Was it oversupply of studios? Was it maybe poor operators that just bought in and jumped on something that was blowing up? Like, what do you think is the real issue now with sort of these studios closing down?
I think there's a few areas that I'm definitely paying a lot of attention to as we grow. And look, like I said at the start, I like to learn from other people that have been there and done that. And elements of that should be we should learn from other mistakes and try to prevent them, right? So I think F45 did an incredible job of brand saturation. Like in Australia, the thing just blew up, right? Like you were a part of it. I probably followed you because of F45. And they focused heavily on brand equity, and it was a huge success story. I think there's elements that potentially they could have invested more in, and that would have been data collection, studio performance, maybe who they were bringing into the network in those earlier days, but even more importantly, as they started to tap out in Australia, what did their territories look like? What was the serviceability going to be? Did they predict that because they were early adopters to this space, especially in Australia, that they would get competition, and competition would then dilute their membership base? So I think a lot of strategy was missing potentially from their success, and maybe they didn't think that they were going to be that big. Maybe they got caught up in just making sales and the high life of getting opens, reporting on studio number overall, rather than lives impacted or membership numbers. So yeah, I think there's so many learnings to be had, but yeah, the growth happened very quick.
Do you think there is a saturation point in terms of available market? I'll give you an example. Like I saw a real silly article the other day on and this is sort of me being a little bit biased, but on the dangers of Pilates and how teachers need 500 hours of Pilates training to really know how to teach Pilates. And that was by the Sydney Morning Herald. And there was a comment on there, because they posted on their Instagram, and one lady said 60% of all Australians are overweight, and 31% are obese. Why are you fear-mongering and creating this sort of media scrutiny around Pilates or training when most of the population is overweight? So I guess, my question is there enough market for all of these new concepts to come in? Because you're expanding, we're expanding, there's so many new brands coming into the market. Should the messaging be, let's all get healthy and let's start moving, regardless of what the product is or the service is?
Yeah, definitely, right? Like, for us, we really focus on inspiring more people to move more so they live more. We actually really heavily encourage people to train at Fitstop 3 days a week. Like, we've gamified it, we create a streak around it. We've got all this interaction with it because we want people to get outside, get moving, be active, do other things. We understand that for me, Fitstop isn't about what you're necessarily doing in Fitstop. It's what you can do what Fitstop helps you do outside of that. So something that I've been conscious of looking at is, we've gone through different stages of fitness cycles. We've gone through, elements of group fitness, with Les Mills and Jane Fonda and all that sort of stuff. Everyone knows the fitness trends, but where it really started to explode was that big box, then into 24/7. There's elements that are still out there for everyone, but it's being conscious of where you are placing yourself in different markets. What is brand saturation in those markets? How are you guys going to be able to support and service each other? Going back to having your own niche as well and having something you stand for. I think if you're getting into the fitness world to make money or to bring a fitness concept out that's on trend, that's very, very dangerous. And there will be a saturation point for that because your consumer doesn't have a point of difference. So yeah, my advice on all of it, and definitely things that we look at, is like, what is that localized market? What are other brands in there? What does it have the capacity to service? Do we stand out from the crowd? We're doing that right now with the US, and that's a very different story over there for sure.
How are you navigating that? Because that is a highly competitive, highly saturated market where I think the best will survive and the best will flourish. And there's probably gyms that open and close within 9 to 12 months, right? So how are you navigating all of that?
I think for me, it's Fitstop needs to stay true to its values and value for someone else. So we've created this pop-up, and that was, to be honest, my test of, are we relevant and relative in the market in LA? So we went and built out an office. We built a beautiful pop-up. Wish I had it here in Australia as well. And we're doing Saturday sessions, free Saturday sessions. Again, back to creating a database and allowing an opportunity to come and trial it. But we're getting feedback from the consumer. And something that we've experienced is Fitstop's very different to any other offering over there. Fitstop provides a 12-week training cycle. Within that, we have a 6-week Unstoppable series where we really focus on creating new disciplines. We focus on performance. Our training genuinely brings people together as a team, and that's the feedback we're getting. And it actually blows my mind that fitness is very different in the US. Like, I think in the Australian landscape, we've got more competition between us in what we consider boutique versus what we have actually in the US. Boutique in the US is the Barry's Bootcamp, the Orange Theory, the standalone Pilates. It hasn't really changed or evolved over maybe the last 20 years. CrossFit was big, but it lacked structure and now growth. So I think it's a really nice time for us to be able to give a fitness offering that has a point of difference, that builds community, that builds connection, and that's what we're really, really leaning into.
Yeah, mate, I can't wait to watch it all happen. You've brought on Pistol Pete.
Yes.
I did want to touch on ambassadors.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, it's quite subjective in whether, it's a positive thing. Say, for instance, the Wahlberg thing with F45.
Sure.
And, what's your take on ambassadors? Is it all about selection and getting the person with the right values? Or I mean, there's argument to say maybe we just really need eyes on the brand, so we go for someone like a Wahlberg or a Beckham or... Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on it all?
Look, Pistol Pete's definitely not Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
But look, for me, entering the US market, and I'll touch on Pete first, I really needed, like, my first hire over there, and again, this is me going back to being the personal trainer first, it needed to be a genuine fitness advocate. I'd followed Pete for a long time. He had been a part of some great brand stories, but when you follow his story, he's always stayed really, really true to his own fitness style, and it blended so well with Fitstop. And that authentic piece of, if a trainer can come in, or a fitness influencer or an athlete or an ambassador, whatever we want to call them, can come in and train at Fitstop, and the comment can be, oh, this is how I love to train, that's what sparks our attention. So my number one rule is it has to be authentic to the brand. Definitely we want eyeballs on the brand, but it has to be an authentic brand story that they genuinely buy into and want to train this way on the daily. So whether they were writing their own program, training their clients like this, because again, I go back to being a PT, I built it all around just human performance and progression. And then be a part of a community and a larger brand and help amplify their voice as well. So it's got to go both ways. So Pete joined us, a little bit as the brand advocate to help take our DNA from Australia and plug it in to give it relevance in the US. But his next stage and phase is to be more of an educator in the space. He's been a part of the bigger brands that he's learnt from, and his number one piece stepping into Fitstop was part of the reason we created the pop-up and the office in LA was every single person that comes through Fitstop, owner, trainer, manager, will come through our induction space. Pete will onboard them, train them, induct them into the Fitstop feeling, the methodologies, the campaigns, and then we'll be able to scale in the right way for the US. So, but outside that, sure, we've had a number of brand ambassadors, but they have to be authentic. They have to, genuinely gel with the Fitstop training and believe in it, and obviously get reach in the right audience.
Yeah, it's hard to find all of that in one person, isn't it?
It is.
We our sort of most engaged market right now, and our most profitable market is actually Adelaide.
Yeah.
We brought on an AFL player called Travis Boak. I don't know if you know who Trav is, being
Sorry, Trav,
Queenslander.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, he's just a rugby guy, aren't you, mate? It's Trav. Trav attributes a lot of his longevity in his AFL career to Pilates.
Yeah.
And he's quite a cult hero, I would say, in Adelaide. And when we brought him on, I would say there was a really direct and measurable correlation between bringing him on and the success of Adelaide, which is really interesting because I've always been, I guess, a bit of a critic in this space. So, mate, I think I almost proved myself wrong with that, but there's certainly value in getting the right people. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Look, and I think that's something that Fitstop is looking at and is focused on, is the getting more eyeballs on the brand with, authentic storytelling. And we definitely do that, through our community, our raving fans, our brand advocates that live and breathe it every day. But, something that I look at with your brand that I really admire and lean into is the way that you do your branding elements, the way that you've been able to bring on, some of these superstars that advocate for your brand, get the eyeballs on it, and are supporting you to grow. For sure, you're nailing that space.
Appreciate that, mate. And while we're on looking at inspiration, who do you look to for inspiration? I mean, let's even consider things outside the fitness space.
Yeah.
I mean, who else do you look to? Brands, businesses, people?
Yeah, look, there's two I am really focused on at the moment. One's in the fitness space, one isn't. I'm really interested in watching Planet Fitness in the US, obviously with the US focus at the moment. They've tapped into a market. They know their space. They've created, from what I can tell, incredible brand and systems. They're getting awesome return on investment, for their business owners, their franchisees. They're just crushing it. Like they're the new age, big box, having a good crack at it in a space that almost you could have considered to die. But they've reinvented it. So I think Planet Fitness doing an incredible job in the US. Yes, it's changing the landscape. They're coming into Australia. They're offering cheap memberships and all that sort of stuff. But like you said, there's so many people out there that need fitness, and they're tapping into some of this. So I think they're great.
Who was the second one?
The second one is Domino's.
Right.
I'm a massive fan of Domino's. Actually, personally fanboy Don, the CEO. Head office run out of Australia. They're the master for Domino's, but they're actually larger than Domino's, the US entity. They've focused heavily on customer satisfaction, the technology, the automation behind your ordering system. They're focused on driving revenue into their businesses. What they do very well, I believe, is the brilliant basics around their franchisees, business owners, focused on product, and they focus on distribution. And I think that's important. And that's something that I've definitely built our business around, is how do we build amazing systems that are scalable, that amplify the brand, that give better data insights to make key business decisions, where a business owner, a franchisee, can focus on product execution, local community, boots on the ground. And that's the scalable effect that I'm looking for. So, yeah.
They're considered a tech company, aren't they? Is that right? Did I read that somewhere?
Don actually doesn't say that. So he actually says, no, we're a pizza company. So, Don started in Domino's as a pizza maker, if that's what you call it, delivery driver even. So, he talks heavily around, first and foremost, we are the pizza company. We make pizzas, but we amplify what we do with technology. I've definitely stolen that from him, where we're a fitness company first. Like, we have to focus on what our programming does for the consumer, the in-person member experience, but we amplify all of that with brand and technology.
Don't Planet Fitness give free pizza as well? Isn't
They
that part of
do,
their
yeah.
thing?
Maybe I love pizza.
Maybe it's a pizza thing.
I think it's on a Friday night. They do free pizza. And look, it's an interesting model. I personally wouldn't go and train there, but I really respect what they're doing in the space.
Mate, it's an amazing case study, and it's actually the second time that they've been mentioned on this podcast as well. But just so much of the data coming from the US is based off, Planet Fitness and their success. So it's going to be crazy where they land, because they've got a lot of growth, I guess, in the pipeline. So, Well,
I think and just on Planet Fitness, I don't know the exact stats on this, but I'm sure you guys can look it up, I was able to meet a franchisor of Planet Fitness that had actually built out a bit of a roll-up strategy. They had built a group that opened 100 Planet Fitnesses, and this is very similar to groups in Domino's and Subway. And they exited that group for $1.1 billion. So as a franchisee, they created an incredible vehicle, an incredible group where they didn't have to think about innovation or product. They just focused on being this engine of distribution, and they exited that for $1 billion. That's an incredible success story that shows that Planet Fitness is a genuine franchise model.
I think the success stories that we probably see, more on your level, it would be multi-site owners, right? So, what portion of your business is multi-site owners? Is it majority? Is it, how does that ratio look?
It's still, for us, minority. We actually made it a pretty hard and fast rule in the early stages. I don't think we did a multi-site until we had about 50 open. Could be wrong, but it was around that. Purely because, again, going back to probably my internal beliefs and values, I didn't believe at that stage we had a system that warranted servicing a multi-site. We hadn't built out a strategy around it. We didn't have a support group. And I'm never someone that wants to kind of go and have someone else experiment with it. I really want to be able to set people up for success. And again, that's just my view on franchising. But since we have started doing the multi-unit approach, we've got some incredible success stories. We've got a pretty large group now in WA. They've just opened their 7th as a group, but incredible structure, support, access to capital, which is super important. They're sharing the journey with having incredible managers at each of their locations, so super community focused still. But they're scaling it out. I believe their goal was to get to 9. I encouraged them the other day just to round it out to 10, just for fun. But they're doing incredible. It's something that we're actually building at the moment to go to our network, our level 4s and 5s, and do some case studies on what they've done. We've got a couple of guys in Queensland that own up to about 3 that are looking to expand a little bit more. The only challenge we face in Queensland is because we started there, that's majority of our saturation is done there. So in these other states, New South Wales, South Australia, WA, you've still got the ability to become a multi-site quite early if you're going to still follow the Fitstop processes, systems, have access to capital. It's an amazing vehicle now. So it is an exciting stage for us because for me, what I love seeing with these guys is they're actually sharing the journey with their managers. They've got the capital, the systems, and the knowledge to then grow amazing trainers and take more people on a journey.
It is such an amazing growth pathway for a trainer or someone who's started at the business to be able to then look at site 2 with the owner or investor. And mate, good on you for sort of holding strong and not going to the multi-site straight away. I really like that you were very meticulous in that approach, getting it right and then doing it. I think that's really cool. Mate, let's pull it back to Australia as a whole, and there's a lot of talk about recession and discretionary spending. And firstly, are you seeing that influence already in some of your studios? Are people using it as an excuse? And do you think we need to be wary of it moving forward?
I think, look, we're looking at our attrition rates really closely, and probably a bigger lead indicator for us is how are our campaigns going. When we're casting our campaigns, we don't do free week anymore, but we do Fitstop on us, and then we again cycle that into some sort of call to action, and then drive into our Unstoppable series. But what we're looking at is, yes, where is the vulnerability in the market and what are the questions that people are asking. Right now, we're not seeing it from our members because I think there's still so much value driven towards fitness. Now, we grew through COVID. So I think with the right message in market, and you need to have price pointed your membership, in the correct areas. I think some brands get pretty carried away with seeing how much yield they can drive, a certain membership number. I listened to something the other day where it was pitched as a game, essentially, to be like, add another $10 a week, add another $10 a week. Sell a really high price point. Or all of a sudden we're $99 a week and, we only need 10 members for that. But I think it's got to come back to the value that you're driving your member and the value that they seek in their membership. I think in group fitness, our members are going to look at their membership and judge it in a way that they're going to break it down per use. So if I'm paying $60 a week and I'm going 3 times a week, that's $20. Am I getting value for that? Where else could I get better value? Do I relate it back to a personal training session? So I think price point and market, super important. I think from a franchise side, that's where we're going to get more questions around return on investments and where people should be parking their money, essentially. The house market, housing has just gone crazy. People, that have made money there are looking to diversify. They're looking for safety and security. And the conversations we were having with people during COVID was really similar around, okay, well, what can you control right now? You can control elements of running your own business. You can control where you choose to put some of your invested money to get a great return. We do know that people are going to highly prioritize their health and fitness. I think for me, myself, I know I would prioritize a group membership over probably having multiple coffees a day. I would much rather have the Nescafe, instant coffee, and go to the gym. So I think there's definitely elements you need to be conscious of. But if you lean into the value you're providing, your price points are right, and you've got a great community, then you're good.
I'd like to think that we've certainly evolved in the last, call it 10 years. I mean, probably massively in the last 3, given COVID and everything that's happened. But I'd like to think that we prioritise fitness a lot more than what we probably used to, particularly, when Australia went through the last recession. I'd like to think that, we're in a very different place. So, time will tell if it becomes a real issue. We're probably not seeing it just yet, and similar. I've got similar points to you, but it's going to be an interesting year, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely know. One of the trends that we've followed is rental increases. In higher density areas, Gold Coast, and different city locations, we know our members are moving a lot more, and we actually see transfer rates increasing because we transfer between locations or allow our members to do that. We see that increasing because your landlord might put your rent up by $400, but you can get a better deal up the road. So you'll move 2 kilometers to be in the same radius, but you're going to be a bit more flexible with maybe some of the living arrangements. So I think, watching what rent's doing, obviously mortgage increases, discretionary spending, sentiment overall, I think it goes back to the F45 piece. More people are just going to ask more questions.
Yep. Mate, I wanted to ask you this before we sort of start to wrap it up, but this is a big one, and it's a question that I really enjoy asking a lot of franchisors. But obviously, you've got the high performing studios, you've got low performing studios. You talked about your level 5 franchisees. What are the key attributes for success? Surely there's patterns and things that you're seeing in operators. And let's call them things that are controllable or things that you can learn, because I think that's what's going to provide the most amount of value on this podcast, is actually delivering, this information of, as opposed to picking the best area or picking the best site or things like that. What are you seeing operationally? Is it attitudinal? What is it with those sort of level 5 franchisees that is just setting them apart from the rest?
It is a really interesting one, because I think, outside looking in, you can look at a high performing studio and see the vibe and the energy and, what's going to attract more and more members. And once you get that momentum, sure, it does become easier. But we've actually dived really deep into this, probably in the last 6 months, and the ops team is so focused on this. It's the brilliant basics, and the two things that stand out more than anything. The first one's planning. It's what's your quarterly plan, and again, being a part of a franchise network, you follow an overarching brand plan. So we set our campaign calendars, the programming, everything's already set for you. But then how are you taking that to build an overarching 90-day plan? Obviously, you have to build out a business model, which is your financial year. And again, going back to planning, but what's your P&L look like? How are you going to drive revenue? What's your return on investment? But if you go really tactically, what's your quarterly plan? How's that aligning with Fitstop's plan? And what are we going to execute on? And then going down that next step further is what's your 30-day action plan, and how are you distributing that across your team? Because again, you're buying into a franchise network, but it doesn't mean you have to be the owner operator that does all things. You've got a team. You've got a team of trainers. Maybe you've got a manager in there. So if you can hold incredible team meetings, so a monthly team meeting, deliver a 30-day plan, and then you can hold accountability to that weekly with a set structure, and you can have a supportive team that not only buys into tactically what you need to do, but why you're doing it, then you win. And the big difference between, say, our level 1s and level 5s is level 5s do the brilliant basics really, really well. Level 1s get a little bit overwhelmed sometimes, and sure, there maybe is a bit more financial pressure there, but they forget the planning elements. They forget to maximize the Fitstop approach, campaign calendar. They maybe go a little bit more isolated and think potentially they have to do everything themselves, or they could focus on running an incredible team meeting, rally the troops, and enjoy the journey together. So
that might be my favorite answer to that question so far, because, mate, most of the time it's, they're able to build a community, or they're able to do, execute on the sales process, but planning, it seems so basic, but it's just such an important element, isn't it? And you're right, now that I'm reflecting on our franchise network, you're right, the planners are the ones that are absolutely nailing it, and the ones that are leaders and have that ability to have that meeting and inspire a team for 30 days and then for 3 months and 12 months. And yeah, mate, that's awesome.
One of my biggest tips to doing this sort of stuff with your team is, set some fun goals. Your team need to know the metrics that matter to you in your business and what you're striving for. Have some competition around it. I know some of our guys will do, a custom set of Nikes for, the entire team if they convert at, 48%. And think about the metrics that get you to the end result. Don't just say to the team, oh, we need to sign 50 members. Break it down so that everyone's, having input and also having touch points through the process. So for us, our managers are absolutely driving lead calls, building connection, but they've got to pass that over to the trainers so that when, the new person, when you walk into bundle, Maddie's there and he's going, hey mate, this person told me you're coming in. I know you've done, this training before. This is the session today. I'm going to take you through the session, and after we'll talk about what it looks like to become a Fitstopper. Right? So it's got to be that ultimate team sport again, where you're passing on the information, the knowledge, and then helping people join into your community. So if you can set those metrics that matter for the entire team, gamify it, incentivize based off conversion rates or conversations or next session booked, that really works.
It doesn't all have to be just numbers and trying to hit targets. Hey, it can be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, mate, I love that. All right, last question, and this is sort of one that I have asked everyone on this podcast so far. What does the future of the fitness industry look like to you? Let's look at this over, I don't know, the next 5 to 10 years. What's it look like for you?
Look, I think I'll answer it for what it looks like for Fitstop first. Yep. And, for us, we've been able to develop, I believe, a really strong system and brand, and I really want to challenge that with global expansion. It is about creating create a global fitness community that cares, and make sure that everyone's proud of that. Something that's really meaningful for me is that everyone gets to, enjoy and be proud of the journey. So, a little example of that was when we hit 100 location open. Sure, Beck and I flew to New Zealand, and I got to take the session and be a part of it. But every single Fitstop location did a special 100th location celebration workout where the members could experience, the company growth. So, for me, it's how do we grow something truly special in all the right ways, and how do we challenge this to bring it to more people? It's staying true to why we started the brand in the first place. The training methodology is always number one for me. Supporting this through technology and systems, and allowing business owners to step into this business and apply their personality and get a great financial return. That's what I'm focused on. I think our training methodology, we're in such a nice space. We're not HIIT training. We are a typical S&C structured program that has periodized training that does get results for people. And I think we're seeing a big trend shift in the market in our space. I also think that we provide genuine group fitness where you have to collaborate. You have to form a sense of vulnerability and connection, and we're genuinely leading into that. So outside of Fitstop, though, I think the fitness space needs to grow up a little bit, and not talking about the actual product. So whether it's Pilates or HIIT or S&C or whatever it looks like, but I think overall the fitness space should grow up and become more sophisticated and value business. Like, look at bigger bigger franchise brands or bigger standalone company brands and take a little bit more of the weight on there. And then from a fitness landscape, what's going to get great people results? How do we maybe not reinvent the wheel, but make sure we're focused on the pillars of fitness that have just always been here? I think you guys are doing a great job of that, because you're focused on modalities that have been here, but you've put your own spin on it to give you a huge USP. We haven't reinvented the wheel with what we've done. We've focused on typical S&C, but we've been able to put our spin on it to give us a great USP. So my advice is don't be a fad, be genuine, be fitness, stay true to your values, grow up and be sophisticated business and take responsibility of that, and then we all thrive.
Love it. Pete Hull, thank you very much. Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please share on your social media, send it to all your friends, get this out there to absolutely everyone. It's going to help us grow, keep expanding, and keep delivering more amazing content for you. Thanks.